All right, so as you're stepping into your career as a counselor or psychotherapist, you know that every single decision you make, every relationship you build, is all guided by this ethical compass. So today, let's really break down the frameworks that are going to shape, well, your entire professional journey.
Think about it. The therapeutic relationship. It's incredibly powerful, right? It's all about vulnerability, and it's built completely on trust. And that's exactly why having this solid ethical foundation isn't just some box you have to tick. It is the absolute heart of doing this work safely and effectively. So here in Australia, your practice is going to be guided by two main players, the Australian Counselling Association, we'll just call it the ACA, and the Psychotherapy and Counselling Federation of Australia, or PACFA. Get used to these names because their codes of ethics, they're basically going to be your professional best friends.
Okay, so you look at these big, kind of dense documents and you might wonder, what's the point? Why did these codes even exist in the first place?
Well, it really boils down to two things. At their absolute core, these codes are here to protect the client. Their well-being is always number one. But for you, the practitioner, think of it like a map. It's there to help you navigate all the tricky, complex stuff that's got to come up in your work. All right, before we dive into the nitty-gritty rules, we've got to talk about the why. We need to get a handle on the philosophical heart of all this, the moral principles that are behind every single decision you're going to make. And honestly, PACFA's code does a really great job of laying these out. It all starts with trust. I mean, this is the absolute cornerstone, right? It's all about honoring the trust that a client places in you. That means respecting their choices, their privacy, their confidentiality. Let's be real. Without that, therapy just doesn't work. It's a non-starter. And once you have that trust, it opens the door for autonomy. See, your job isn't to tell people what to do, it's to empower them. This principle is all about respecting a client's right to be their own guide, to make their own decisions. And how do you do that? Through super clear communication, getting fully informed consent, and never, ever trying to manipulate them. Then there's beneficence. It's a fancy word, but it just means you're committed to doing good, to promoting your client's well-being. This is the active part of your job, acting with care and compassion, and making damn sure you're always working within your own limits, within your scope of competence, to really serve them well. And of course, the flip side of doing good is, well, not doing bad. That's non-maleficence. It's the classic do no harm principle. It means you are actively avoiding any kind of exploitation, emotional, financial, whatever. And if harm does happen, even by accident, you take responsibility and you work to fix it. But it's not just about avoiding harm, right? We have to go further and actively pursue fairness. This principle is huge. It means treating everyone impartially. It means appreciating all the ways people are different, constantly working on your own biases, and making sure that every single person who comes to you has the same opportunity for quality care. And listen, this next one is so, so important. These principles, they're not just for the client. They apply to you too. We're talking about self-respect. You can't do this work long-term if you're not taking care of yourself. Fostering your own self-knowledge, looking after your own well-being, that's not a luxury. It's a professional obligation. Because a burnt-out, compromised therapist just can't give the care their clients deserve. Okay, so we've got the big picture principles down. Now let's get practical and talk about something that can be one of the trickiest parts of the job, setting and maintaining professional boundaries. Okay, so check this out. Both codes are super clear that dual relationships, where you're a therapist and also a friend, or maybe a business partner, are risky and should be avoided. But look at the difference in tone. The ACA is a bit more pragmatic, right? It says, hey, in a small rural town, this can be tough to avoid, so just make sure you're getting good supervision. But PFCFA, they come in stronger. They say these relationships are seldom neutral and can have these huge, unpredictable impacts. And that brings up a huge question. What happens after therapy is over? And this is where things get really, really specific. There's a critical difference between the two codes here. And honestly, if you're a student, this is one of those things you just gotta know cold. Okay, for the ACA, the rule is pretty straightforward. You are prohibited from starting a relationship, sexual or otherwise, with a former client for at least 2 years after your last session. 2 years. But then you look at PACFA, and whoa, it's a much stricter line in the sand. Their code says no romantic or sexual relationships with former clients or even their close family for a minimum of 5 years after therapy ends. 5 years. That's a big jump. And PACFA doesn't just stop there. They go even further, and this really shows you how seriously they take this. They say that even after those 5 years are up, you still have to stop and think really hard about the power imbalance that might still be there, and the potential for exploitation. So the takeaway here is huge. 5 years isn't a green light. It's the absolute minimum waiting period.
Okay, so speaking of trust and power, let's talk about the absolute bedrock of the entire therapeutic relationship. I'm talking about confidentiality. You know, a client has to feel like the therapy room is a vault, a safe, totally private space. Both codes agree, confidentiality is absolutely essential. But, and this is a huge but, they also lay out some very specific, very serious situations where that promise of confidentiality doesn't just get bent, it has to be broken. So if you genuinely believe there's a serious risk of harm, either to your client or to someone else, you don't just panic and pick up the phone. There's a process. The codes walk you through it. First, you assess the risk. Then, you consult your supervisor. Seriously, this part is non-negotiable. You try to get the client's consent, if that's even possible or safe. Then, you only disclose the bare minimum of what's necessary. And finally, you document everything. Every thought, every conversation, every decision. Okay, last big section here. Let's flip the lens around and look inward. Because these codes aren't just about how you treat clients, they're also about your responsibilities to yourself, to other professionals, and to the profession as a whole. Think about it. Professional competence isn't a finish line you cross at graduation, not at all. It's an ongoing, active, ethical duty. That means you're always in supervision. You're always learning and developing professionally. You have the humility to say, you know what, this is beyond me, and refer someone on. And you have the self-awareness to constantly check in with yourself and ask, am I actually fit to practice today? And this really brings us right back to where we started. Both codes make it crystal clear. Your own well-being is critical for ethical practice. Self-care isn't some fluffy, selfish add-on. It's a core professional responsibility. It's simple, really. You just cannot pour from an empty cup. You can't take care of others if you're not taking care of yourself. So at the end of the day, these codes, they're your map, they're your compass. They are absolutely essential. But what they're not is an answer key that solves every problem for you. Your entire career is going to be a journey of reflecting on this stuff, talking with supervisors, and just growing. So the real question to leave you with is this. When you're faced with a messy, complex case and these principles seem to contradict each other, how are you going to find your way?